47 years young, Roy Jones Jr. is getting back in the ring to fight journeyman Rockin' Rodney Moore. The bout is August 13th. It's in Pensacola, Florida. Now, this fight will headline the Island Fights 38 card. This is an ongoing series that combines boxing matches and MMA bouts on the same show. Jones is 63-9 with 46 KOs. Stephen A., 47. Should Roy fight?
No, he should not. Max covers the sport of boxing. He works with Roy Jones. I've known Roy Jones for years because obviously he was pretty close with Allen Iverson. And, you know, Roy and I have gotten to know each other. And, you know, I consider him a friend. I think he's a beautiful person. I got a lot of love for him. And I say everything that I'm about to say. It's nothing new. It's something I've told Roy Jones to his face. It's something I said to him on the phone. It's something I said to friends and confidants of his. I've wanted Roy Jones to retire since he got knocked out by Lebedev back in 2011, if I remember correctly. I think it was May 21st, 2011. He got knocked out in Russia. Went to Russia again and got knocked out last year, December 12th. And I was screaming again, they don't need to allow him to fight anymore. I do believe that some of the shots that he's taken, he's never, even though the Tarver stoppage, that can happen to anybody, Max. You know this better than me. The knockout to Glenn Johnson was when he fell and he hit the back of his head and he was shaking on the canvas. I mean, that was some scary stuff that I saw happen to him. I think that was in Memphis years ago. He continues to fight. He's fighting no-names. He's fighting, you know, cruiserweights and guys like that. And even though he's won some of them against these no-names, when he's been knocked out viciously. Macaronelli, I believe. I mean, he fell face first. You know, I'm looking at this stuff, and I just don't want to see this. You know, Roy Jones was spectacular. Roy Jones was great, and Max will elaborate more extensively on it than I ever could when he highlights, you know, the greatness of Roy Jones, how he was #1 in the world pound for pound, what he meant to the sport of boxing over a 9-year period. He was absolutely spectacular. But I think you'll agree with me, Max, when I say this. His fundamentals were never great. His star status, who he was. And if I'm not going to front here, because as much as I know my boxing, watching you and watching who I consider to be the greatest voice in the history of boxing outside of Howard Cosell, which is Jim Lampley. I mean, I listen to you guys. It's not just what I see. It's not just what I know. It's not just what I watch, okay? It's also listening to you call these fights. I am telling you, I am scared for Roy Jones Jr. I'm not playing. I think Roy Jones is a good man. And remember when his friend McClellan with Nigel Benn and got, he obviously was up there, Gerald McClellan. You know, when he got hurt, Roy was up on Capitol Hill, you know, testifying before Congress, like, look, we need to do something for the sport of boxing. We need to do something for these fighters. I'm getting scared that one of these days, something akin to this is going to happen to Roy, and I desperately don't want it. And Max, I'm on the record. I have begged publicly and I have begged privately for him to retire, not to fight anymore, and I've even called for them not to allow him to fight anymore. But Roy's hard-headed, man, which you know.
Two things. One, as a friend of his, I don't want to see him get hurt. I don't want to see him lose and take these shots. But let me tell, and you know, we are colleagues and everything. Yeah. And actually, the first fight I ever worked with him, he was ringside, and I was at the host position. I was the analyst, and Bob Costas was the host. And Bob asked me about Roy, who had just, if memory serves, lost to Antonio Tarver. This is a guy who never lost a round to anyone. All of a sudden, he was knocked out. And then also, you're right, Glenn Johnson, going back about 10 years. Understand, Roy was a guy who never lost a moment of a fight, and all of a sudden he's being dominated and stopped by a guy who these guys couldn't touch him in his prime.
Right.
So I used some phrasing, the way I said Tom Brady fall off a cliff, and I used another word that made everyone mad. I was also a little careless with what I said and said that he was damaged goods at the time, and Roy was hot, boy. Roy saw me, and I was like, what's up? He's always been very good to me in the press and everything, you know, giving me interviews and stuff, and he wanted to, like, hit me. You know, I was like, what's up? He's like, he was just hot, right? What I explained to him subsequently, I apologize for the way it came out, but I don't like what's happening to his legacy. Let's table the man and the dangers of boxing for a second. I want people to understand this. Kids, you know Floyd Mayweather. He's been the best pound for pound for a long, unbroken time, right? In boxing. And then he put distance between himself and everyone else. He's like this and everyone else is below him. Floyd was in his prime when Roy was in Roy's prime for years and years and years. Not a single person on earth ever even wondered, is Floyd as good as Roy? You understand how good Roy Jones was? It's like when Jordan was in his prime and Shaq was coming up and no one ever asked, is Shaq as good as Jordan? Then the day Jordan retires, Shaq puts that same distance between him and everyone else. That's who Jordan was. That's who Roy was. He put distance between him and Floyd, like Floyd puts more distance even than Floyd puts between him and everyone else. Roy was the best I'd ever seen in person with my own eyes. They couldn't touch him.
With knockout power.
Just go look at old clips of Roy. I'm not talking about from 10 years ago. I'm talking about from 15 years ago. This is how good Roy was. Remember when Mike Tyson knocked out Michael Spinks?
Yeah.
Kids, this is the distant past. Everyone thought Mike Tyson, they wouldn't say it out loud, but he's going to be the greatest fighter ever. He's going to be better than Ali. He's going to be better than Sugar Ray Robinson. He's going to be the greatest ever. That's what people were thinking, and the old-timers wouldn't say it, but everyone was thinking it. If I told you on that night that there is an amateur junior middleweight who is never going to come close to really losing a fight, should won a gold medal, got ripped off, win titles at middleweight, super middleweight, jump up to light heavyweight, jump up to heavyweight,
against John Ruiz,
beat a top 5 heavyweight and one day open 2-1 to beat Mike Tyson, you would say that's not possible. You're describing the best fighter ever. That's how we perceived Roy Jones the night he beat John Ruiz. This guy may challenge Sugar Ray Robinson for the #1 pound-for-pound spot of all time. The fact that kids nowadays see Roy Jones even competing, let alone losing, to these fighters, I hope people understand, none of these guys could last a round or two with Roy in his prime. So there's the man that I'm worried for, my friend, who I understand, I respect him. By the way, if you have Roy Jones as a friend, you have a friend. He is loyal. Roy would give you the shirt off his back. He never looks for publicity for it. I've had people come up to me and say things like, he paid for their kids' school and stuff. You know, like, he's an amazing guy.
I forgot the guy's name, but you'll remember this. Some guy, this is not an exaggeration, Molly. Some guy fought him. And you know how they say Roy Jones, from Pensacola, Florida. This guy was from Rahway State Prison. That's what they announced him as, okay? He comes out, muscles everywhere. He races across the ring to swing on Roy. And by the end of the first round, he had got dropped at least once, I think twice. You understand? And Roy could have hurt him more, but Roy was like trying to be nice to him. And then in the second round, after dropping him again, then he has the guy hurt, and Roy steps away and looks at the ref. Come on, man. Stop this. And the ref like, keep going. Roy like, whop. This is what... He's special.
So there's the man, nice. There's the man and my friend who I'm concerned for. Roy, we love you. I love you, brother. You know that. But then there's also the boxing fan in me who wants people to understand what this man was at his best. I do not want people thinking about this fighter. I want people remembering the guy he was in his prime, because you will never see something like that again.
We got to go. Roy Jones Jr. was every bit as marvelous as Max just described. People barely remember that now. We don't even see his fights. Even when he got knocked out, I saw it on YouTube. I didn't even know he had a fight. That's how much he's fallen, and I'm just so scared for him, Molly, because like Max said, you can't find a nicer guy. You can't find a nice guy.
It's not just nice, it goes deep.
He's a good man.
Loyal to his friends.
He's a good man.
Cares about people.
He's a good man.
And by the way, a brilliant commentator. Like, I can't tell you how much I've learned about boxing sitting next to Roy Jones on the undercard to fight, calling fights.
So really the combination of legacy and safety, of course, is why you guys don't want to see him back in the ring. When we come back to the NFL, the Eagles, why can't they seem to keep Chip Kelly's name out of their mouths even though he's moved on? Is it time for the Philly players to just be quiet? We'll explain, we'll react when we come back. Stephen A., break this down for me. You know Philly very well. Chip's gone. Do they need to stop talking about him?
They do need to stop talking about him. Jason Peters is not wrong with anything that he said. He's completely accurate. You know, obviously, you know, I took a lot of heat because of the reports that I was going, you know, that I reported on the story, just to refresh your memory, Max, in case you didn't hear, because you weren't here at the time, obviously. It all started because I was in Philadelphia, writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer for 17 years, and I still have a home down near that area. And I was at my barbershop on Spring Garden and 15th Street. And while I was going to my car after getting a haircut, three members of the team pulled me over and stopped me, gave me all the details about Chip Kelly, what was going on, the extent to which he would go through to do some of the things that he did that they felt very invasive, unconventional, and a bit excessive. And it went from there. And they basically said, you know, he's got some issues. You know, he's got some issues with us, etc. And everything took off from there. I say all of that to give you the background to say that I'm qualified to say what I'm about to say. I am not in any way challenging what Jason Peters said or what anybody has to say about Chip Kelly. Their criticism of him is accurate. He was arrogant. He was excessive. He thought he knew it all. He didn't want to listen to anybody. He adopted a bunker mentality to the point where he even alienated himself from half the staff. There were a couple of individuals that were on Chip Kelly's staff and would go and talk. You know, they would go around to other officials, former or present officials in the league, where you were seeking counsel, Max, and advice about what to do. And they would say, they literally would ask these people that work for Chip Kelly, what do you do? We work for Chip Kelly. They didn't even have a title. They would just say, we work for Chip Kelly. So they were guys that, you know, you had people getting paid. You didn't know their job description. You didn't know what they did for a living. Yeah. You know, all types of stuff. You know, guys coming home and Chip Kelly and them asking them, what did you do the night before? Like, I went home. I went to bed. Really? Because this person just came to your house at 11 o'clock. So you sure you went to bed? I mean, I'm just telling you what they told me. Look, I'm just telling you what they told me. I wasn't there. I don't know. I wasn't a fly on the wall. I'm telling you what they told me. So with all of that being said, whatever they say about Chip Kelly, I'm going to believe it because I've seen enough from Chip Kelly to believe it. The flip side is this. There comes a point in time. It's time to shut the hell up. And I'm not saying that directed at Jason Peters, who I respect. I'm not talking about, I don't even know him, but I just respect him, his game, and a lot of those guys in that locker room. All I mean by saying it that way is to say this. You have a season coming up. Chip Kelly is no longer your coach. Doug Peterson's your coach now. You got to take into consideration the fact that the Giants have gotten better, the Redskins have gotten better, at least in a lot of people's eyes, and obviously the Dallas Cowboys are going to have Romo and Des Bryant back. In all probability, they're going to be better. So when you take that into consideration, you're not going to have the excuse of Chip Kelly to lean on to justify your dereliction of duty, your ineptitude, your lack of production. You're not pulling that off. You have to adopt the mentality. Chip Kelly is the past. This is the present. We're moving forward. And that is that. Because the more you talk, and I understand that reporters are probably going in their face and inundating them with questions. You got to be like, yo, I ain't here to talk about Chip Kelly no more. Because if we lose, I can't blame him now because he ain't here. Because you're elevating the level of expectations. I feel like the players are starting to come across when I shouldn't say that. When I hear comments like that emanating from their locker room, it gives the impression we lost last year because of Chip Kelly. Not us. We didn't have anything to do with it. And I'm saying, are you sure about that? Because I know that Chip Kelly could have done a better job. Your defense was ranked 30th. You had no conventional offense whatsoever. High speed didn't give any consideration to your defense. But still in all, you were on the field. Are you sure you had nothing to do with it? I'm not. Let's see. That's all I'm saying.
Well, first of all, I agree with that point. Because what you find in life as you mature is that you're responsible for everything that happens to you. And to young people, that sounds weird. You're like, well, sometimes you have bad luck. How are you responsible for it? Responsible doesn't mean you caused it. It means, I said everything that happens to you, it's happening to you. If you don't take responsibility for it, who will? You know? So if that's happening to them, as soon as you start to hear players pointing the finger, and that's why particularly in a military game like football, which is a militaristic sport, people get very suspicious when they start seeing finger pointing. It's not, if you have a bunch of people who don't want to take personal responsibility, that's going to be an issue. Chip Kelly's problem was this, and this is like, it's cliche, the college coach, maybe innovative in college and everything, is dealing with, you can call them young men, because they're not quite adults yet in college, right? Now, you can be authoritarian with those guys. You can tell them what to do, what time to go to sleep. You have really much more control over those kids than you do over professionals and adults. The question, of course, was, will he maintain that attitude in the pros?
Yeah.
And the answer was yes, he did. It was the classic case, it seems, of a guy who would not change his ways and treated professional adults as though they were kids in college. And it fostered resentment. And you know when I know it the most, like, even the Bradford thing, you're like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Read options, like, I don't get, with Sam Bradford, how's that going to work? He can't move. Okay, you know what? If you really look at Chip Kelly's offense, a lot of short passes he uses instead of the running game, right? And then you take, or rather, excuse me, running instead of the short passing game. So you don't take the same kind of risks through the air and you pick up kind of similar yards. And then when he does throw the ball, it's down the field, which Sam Bradford is good at. You want to give him the benefit of that doubt. And you're still like, but Sam Bradford doesn't seem like the right quarterback. The tip to me was when they let go of 2 veteran offensive linemen right before the season. Because if anything, especially given his ideas, you would think you need continuity on the offensive line. And they let it go. And at that point, you say, how much of this is ego, as though, as long as I have a system, the pieces don't even matter. And that further marginalizes the players in terms of the way they feel a part of the team. Not only does this guy want to control everything, but he thinks that we're just purely chess pieces and we don't have, like, varying degrees of ability. So there's a lot of resentment there. I don't think that means Chip Kelly can never be a good coach. This is his first stop. Bill Belichick wasn't very good at his first stop as a head coach either. I think if he is humbled by it to a degree and learns from it, he can still be a good coach. But that wasn't the case there.
Well, let's say this, first of all. Can Chip Kelly be a good coach? Sure. I got a problem. While I'm on the record saying that the Eagles just need to move forward, affectionately embrace the concept of shutting the hell up, understanding that indeed, if you talk, you elevate the level of expectations aimed in your direction because you're giving the impression that last year's 7-9 season was on Chip Kelly and not on you, and they shouldn't do that. Let's not completely gloss over who Chip Kelly is. He was at Oregon. He came to the NFL and tried to make them the Philadelphia Ducks or the Oregon Eagles, whichever way you want to call it, with the whole Oregon crew that he brought on the team, okay? He had no concept whatsoever about defense, time of possession. The gap between that and the offense in terms of time of possession was as wide as the Pacific Ocean. He sat up there and sacrificed defense, sacrificed bodies, sacrificed coaches, didn't give a damn about the city he represented. All of these things are true. And then found himself going to San Francisco, where you got a dude by the name of Trent Baalke, okay, who ran the only dude that kept them relevant in the last decade and a half, Jim Harbaugh, out of town because of ego. But they're together. On. Let's be clear. No one ever questioned Chip Kelly's football knowledge. What we've questioned about Chip Kelly is where your mind is, what do you really, really care about, and how do you go about the business of ingratiating yourself with people that ultimately you will need to produce for you. The man stunk at his job, got fired, and then somehow, some way, inside of 3 weeks, this man had a new contract paying him $6 million per. Only in America, damn it. Let me steal a line from Don King. Only in America can this happen.
Boy,
how the hell does he end up with an NFL? I'm not talking about a job because I know he could go back to college. But an NFL job less than a month after you got fired, after the job you did in Philadelphia?
Why do you think he got the job?
Why do I think he got the
Yes.
job? Well, let's just say that some folks have a beautiful, beautiful way of making the kind of connections, dare I say, most of us don't have the luxury of making.
You're saying he got the connections and the complexion?
Yeah.
By the way, kids, you think he had a pretty good column to read in Philadelphia?
I'm certainly not saying that that's the case with everyone, but it's certainly the case with Chip Kelly.
By the way, real quick,
Right.
I agree that you can't, but you can't just ask players to know this for themselves. You have to have a moratorium. You have to instruct your players, stop answering questions about Chip Kelly. That's the only way to get that done.
And that's the bottom line. Even if the criticism is valid, let's move on now because it's just going to start to make them look weak with you guys.
Stephen A. column out of Philly.
Yeah, he brought it.
You lucky I wasn't there writing the column at that time last year.
Up next,
a lucky man.
We have a very special guest. He knows a thing or two about playing ball. Actor John David Washington is here. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned for that next. Looking smooth.
Killing my